In this video, we'll discuss the differences between prejudice, stereotypes, and discrimination. We'll provide some examples of prejudice, stereotypes, and discrimination, and explain why prejudice and discrimination exist, at least in some ways. Stereotypes occur when we make assumptions about an individual because of their identification with a specific. In other words, it's an overgeneralization. We see one member of a group acting in a specific way, and we assume everybody in that group will act the same way. It's a summary impression of a group. Stereotypes can be good, they can be bad, or they can be neutral. And as much as we try not to, we all have stereotypes. It's part of our cognitive schemas. It helps us process information more quickly. However, it also exaggerates the differences between groups and underestimates the differences within a group. So take a minute. Think about some stereotypes you might be aware of or some that you hold yourself. Here are a few common ones. Black people are always good at basketball or very athletic. Old people are bad drivers. Now, a prejudice is a negative stereotype that leads to a strong, unreasonable dislike or hatred of a specific group. Discrimination occurs when an individual organization acts upon that prejudice. So acts upon that negative stereotype that leads to a strong hatred or dislike for a specific group. So it's a negative action towards a group based on a stereotype. So here are some current examples as of summer 2024. So Snapchat will pay $15 million to settle a lawsuit brought by California Civil Rights Agency that claimed the company discriminated against female employees, failed to prevent workplace sexual harassment, and retaliated against women who complained. The U.S. Department of Education announced this summer that they entered into an agreement with Brown University to make sure the school is in compliance with federal law, barring discrimination and harassment against students of Jewish, Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim ancestry. Here are some specific types of discrimination. It really doesn't encompass everything. There can be racism, so you're discriminating based on an individual's race. Sexism, you're discriminating based off of their sex. Ageism, discrimination because of the age of the individual. And homophobia. Now, how does this discrimination and prejudice come about? Past research has shown that it's really this us versus them mentality that's responsible for prejudice and discrimination. This has been demonstrated in several ways with different experiments over the years. We're going to talk a little bit about the Robbers Cave experiment, which was designed by Muzaffar Sharif to demonstrate the effects of hostility and competition in groups. So it took 11 and 12-year-old boys that were randomly assigned to one of two groups, and they were put in a real-life Boy Scout camp situation. So they randomly assigned them into the Rattlers or the Eagles. To build the in-group identity, he had groups work on projects together. Then he put them into competitions against each other and wanted to see what happened. Sure enough, building that in-group identity and then having them compete with another group fostered hostility. And it didn't just cause the hostility when the groups were competing. This happened even when they were watching TV, when they were eating. In an attempt to undo this hostility and bring peace, he created a situation where the boys had to work together to reach a common goal. So people of the Rattlers and the Eagles together had to work together to create a common goal. And sure enough, this made peace between the groups, leading to the idea that competition between groups created that us versus them social identities, or ethnocentrism, and cooperation reduced that us versus them way of thinking. And this graph here on the side just shows, so this is before the cooperative activities were introduced. So after they had put the boys into these two groups, had them build an in-group identity by working on projects together. So the Rattlers worked on projects together, the Eagles worked on projects together, then having them compete. You can see here, this is the percentage of boys that had a best friend outside of their group. So very small, less than 10% in each group. Now, this is after that cooperative activity between the Rattlers and the Eagles was introduced. And you can see how much that increased the best friend outside of the group.